Time we now take a look at some of the stories making headlines, zooming into Central Africa. And we're joined on the line by geopolitical analyst and columnist Aaron Ngambi. Aaron, good morning to you on this Thursday. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Good morning to you, Asanda, and good morning to the listeners this morning.
Great. Always great catching up with you. Let's start today with the DRC, where the former DRC president, Joseph Kabila, is said to have broken his self-exile of 2 years and he's back in the country. How do we know for sure that he is in the DRC? Reports are saying it's the first time he's in the country since 2 years, which was said before when there were allegations that he's in the country.
Yeah, so from the reports, we have heard that former President Joseph Kabila is back in the DR Congo. And this comes after the Senate in that country lifted his immunity.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that he's making an attempt to be able to come back home and register his presence, because he's been away for at least 2 years now in self-imposed exile. And this is the first time that we are getting reports that he's actually in the eastern DR Congo, that he arrived in Goma, which is the big city in Kiev, in the northern province. And we know this because this news was brokered by the M23 spokesperson from the conflicted region. But also the same news was confirmed by one of the youth leaders of the party that President Kabila belongs to, which is the People's Party for Reconstruction and Democracy. So the party has confirmed through the youth leader, I think his name is Mr. Mimoro, and he has confirmed that President Kabila is in the eastern DR Congo, even though we have not seen footage or anything like that to substantiate that claim.
Word from a rebel spokesperson, as you say, having welcomed Kabila into the country, was reportedly on social media. Should the rebel group say anything at this point, given that he has been accused of being connected to the M23 rebel group, which he has denied? Should the rebel group say anything?
That is the most interesting part. And I think that of all the places that Kabila could have gone to, we're hearing reports that he's actually arrived in Goma, in the eastern province of the DR Congo. And I think that because of the allegations that he has been somewhat behind sponsoring the M23 rebels, this is actually not very good news on the part of President Kabila, as well as his party that has already been banned from Kinshasa. So you're right. I think that it raises a lot of questions about his involvement in this conflict or what is really going on. But for this news to have come from the spokesperson of the M23 rebel group is very worrisome, if it's true.
What are his plans there? Do we know?
Well, he has claimed that even before we heard that he's back in the country, he has claimed that he was going to go to the DR Congo so that he can help facilitate for a peace deal between the rebels and the government of President Tshisekedi. Now, this is very, very hard to actually envision, because President Tshisekedi and his predecessor, President Kabila, have fallen out. They've had serious issues in the past, and like I mentioned, even his political party, the People's Party for Reconstruction and Democracy, has been banned in Kinshasa, and also his immunity was just lifted by the Senate. So we see that the claims that he can actually help in facilitating for some kind of peace deal is really above me, but this is what he believes he can do, and that's why he said he was going back to the DR Congo.
Let's stay with the country. DRC, we know fighting has continued there in the eastern part of the country after another attempt to peace talks has failed. So a ceasefire has failed, basically, to end fighting between the government and the M23 rebels.
Absolutely. I think that since March, when President Tshisekedi and President Paul Kagame met in Doha in Qatar, there were hopes that these talks was just the beginning of the ceasefire. They agreed to the terms of the ceasefire. They agreed to continue talking and dialogue, through Qatar. But it seems like even whatever they agreed on has actually fallen apart because we see that the fighting has continued, that the ceasefire doesn't mean much for both the rebels and as well as the government.
Let's move to Angola now. The country is expected to become the 14th member of a SADC free trade area. What can you tell us about this story?
This is very exciting because Angola, for the longest time, has, not really been persuaded to join the Southern Africa Developing Community Free Trade Area. And so all of a sudden, we hear that now they've come on board after intense negotiations. And in fact, they've agreed to actually 90% of, liberalization of tariffs, even though SADC only requires about 85%. So they've not only come on board, but they're willing to go over and above the requirements of joining this free trade area. And so this is encouraging because what we do is that it will open up trade among the 14 countries that have already signed up to this free trade area agreement. But it will also do a lot of other things. First of all, this is projected that it will create employment for Angola, that it would attract investment and direct trade between Angola and the existing countries within SADC.
What will it mean for how it looks and its reputation in terms of the international community on trade?
Well, I think that this is something that Angola needed to do. I mean, like I said, for the longest time, SADC has been trying to pursue Angola to come into the FTA, but there's been some hesitation. And we know why, because Angola is one of the richest oil countries in the southern region. And Angola has a lot of other international countries that have vested interest in that country. Therefore, they were very hesitant because they were not very sure about their standing in the international community and that how that would affect them if they joined the SADC FTA. But I think this is a positive step in the right direction because it will ease up their market share in the region, and also it will open up a lot of opportunities to the outside world as well.
Let's go to Gabon now. Industries in Gabon have welcomed the appointment to cabinet of Patrick Barbera Isaac, a unionist. He's appointed Minister of Labour there. When does he resume this post?
Well, the new Minister of Labour in Gabon, Patrick Barbera Isaac, actually took office the 1st of May. And he is a very popular trade unionist. He's been very successful at what he does. He seems to be a people person. And this is why you find that almost all the trade union organizations have welcomed his appointment. Right before that, he was the National Secretary of ODEP, which is an oil trade union organization within Gabon. And because of the role that he's played over time, I think a lot of people were thrilled about this appointment, except that there are a lot of expectations. He's going to make sure to deal with three things. First of all, the labor policies that affect Gabon. He has to make sure that labor laws are reformed and followed to the latter. He has to facilitate an environment where they will create employment for young people. The youth unemployment is about 37% in Gabon as we speak. And so there's so many expectations on the part of his performance. But he's a people person and he seems to be equal to the task.
As you say, unemployment is high in the country. What do you think should be part of his plans to tackle this particular issue?
Well, I think some of the things that can be done almost instantly is that we understand Gabon is now trying to diversify not only from oil deals, because if you look at Gabon's GDP, I think 40% of that GDP comes from oil. And so they're now going into natural gas. They're trying to go into tourism and other sectors so that they can liberalize the economy, so that they can diversify into other areas and be able to improve them. So if they do that, that will be the first step in terms of job creation, especially for young people.
Gabon is very oil reliant and heavily so. But besides oil, which other sectors do you think Minister Isaac should be looking into that are viable for expansion?
agriculture. I think that Gabon should go into agriculture. They should go into tourism. These are some of the sectors that have not been fully tapped by the regime, by the government over the years. And so, if they tap into some of these areas, I'm very much convinced that they can diversify from oil dependence. But also, one of the skills that Patrick brings to the table is that he is able to negotiate deals, is able to he understands the decency and the need for work. And so he's able to be the bridge between the employers and the employees and be able to find that balance that appeases both sides of the coin.
Let's move over to Chad now. They've reached a credit agreement with the International Monetary Fund. What does this agreement entail, first of all?
Well, the IMF and Chad have reached what they call the first staff level agreement. This is valued at $630 million. And this means that now it's up to the IMF executive board to sit down and look at what Chad has put on the table and what the IMF conditions are and be able to approve this extended credit facility to Chad. The only problem with the IMF is that we have seen that the IMF over time has not been a good partner for most African countries. I mean, Zambia is a classic example. In the 90s, the IMF had actually demanded that Zambia should privatize companies, even those companies that were viable at the time. They imposed conditions for Zambia to access this credit financing. Unfortunately, that was a catastrophe for Zambia in the 90s. Even recently, Zambia's first level staff level agreement with the IMF was actually reached on December 6, 2021. And then after that, and it was a very big deal among the people in government. In fact, this is when a new regime just took office, which is current now. And so we thought that that was the beginning of light at the end of the tunnel. But after that, we had subsequent other meetings and agreements that were that came down the pipeline. We saw another staff level agreement that was on April 6, 2023, November 20th, 2023, June 3rd, 2024, and November 11th, 2024. Until after those staff level agreements were reached, then Zambia was given some amount of money by the IMF. But even with that came with conditions. And that's been the biggest problem and setback for African countries. There's so many conditionalities attached to the help that comes from the IMF.
Chad has a Vision 2030 framework. If this 4-year agreement is reached upon or approved by the IMF, will this be all that Chad needs in terms of achieving this Vision 2030 framework, or can we expect that it's going to have other asks from other funders?
Well, what Chad wants to achieve, first and foremost, with this credit facility from the IMF is to reduce on its deficit. I think it's hoping that over the period of 4 years, they want to reduce that national deficit at least by 4%. Now, with the projections of what we've seen and with the Vision 2030, which actually is titled The Chad We Want, and also the National Development Plan that's been put forward by Chad, it looks like with the $630 million that they might get from this credit facility, they might well be on a good path. Now, like I said, this depends on what the conditionalities are from the IMF. Would that have adverse effect on the economy, even though the intention is to help the country get out of this mess? So that is yet to be seen, and we are not very sure if really the 6 strategies in the Vision 2030 will be reached at the end of 4 years.
Just briefly now, the African Development Bank Group meeting in Abidjan in Côte d'Ivoire has appointed Leandre Basole as Director General of the bank's regional office and head of the country office for Cameroon. He's a citizen of Burkina Faso. What do we know about him besides that?
Well, he's a very impressive individual. He served in many and various capacities. He was also Director General for the Eastern part of Africa. As you know, also in many other, he has been a senior executive for the bank for over 19 to 20 years. He has vast experience, and he is not the only one that has been appointed during this period. Actually, the bank is meeting to vote today for the president. But before they do that, they have to appoint regional director general, and he's been picked to be the director general for Central Africa. And for all we know, he has a very impressive record. He's proven himself, and in fact, one of his legacies is that he was able to secure a deal between the Africa Development Bank and the Ethiopian Airlines Airport City, which is worth about $7.8 billion. So he is somebody that has vast experience and there's a track record that you can see that his experience has been very beneficial for the bank over time.
Well, we wish him all the best. And we'll leave it on that note for today, Aaron. Thanks so much again for your time and have a great Thursday.
Thank you, Asanda. Thank you for having me.
Aaron Ngambi is a geopolitical analyst and columnist talking to us, giving us an overview of headlines coming from the Central African region of our continent. 30 minutes past 6 Central African time it is. Let's say